How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today, as much as I'd love to tell you it's all sunshine and rainbows, we're here to talk about the 12 biggest mistakes people make when they move to Denver, Colorado in 2025, and we're starting right now. Alright, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everson. Listen, if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons to moving to or around the Denver Metro and Colorado Front Range, this is definitely the channel for you, and you're going to want to click on that subscribe button. And as much as I try to be a little informative here on camera, I'm also a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and team with some of the state's most talented realtors. And we're helping people like you move here each and every day. So the number and email you see on your screen, know that I am always the person, answer your phone calls, answer your texts, answer your emails, there, when and if you need me. Now that we're done with that fun-filled stuff, let's get to what we're here for, and that is the 12 biggest mistakes people make when moving to Denver, Colorado. So over the last several years, I've had the good fortune of helping dozens of people move to Denver, Colorado. And even if they didn't necessarily work with me directly, there were conversations about what Denver and the Front Range is like. And the nice thing is that they learned from me and I learned from them. I got a chance to talk to them about their experiences coming out here, what worked, what didn't. And what I know is that if people plan appropriately and accordingly, they have a better experience as they arrive in Denver. So often, I have talked to people who, let's be real, didn't prepare. They get out to Denver, they get out to Colorado, and because they don't have the preparation, they're kind of scurrying, they never quite get their footing, and they just don't enjoy the city or the state as much as they might have otherwise. Now, I've moved states as well multiple times in my life, some of them in the military, and I know that not everything is smooth right off the bat, so our goal today is to go through some of these common mistakes, many of them made in the earliest days you're here, and many of them quick to overcome, so that as you arrive, you can get past them as quickly as possible and start to really enjoy your life here in Colorado. So with that being said, we're going to start with one of the most basic, one of the most easily Googled, and one of the quickest to overcome, and that is misunderstanding how altitude is going to impact you early on, and also misreading weather patterns. So especially if you are coming from sea level, if you're coming from a lower altitude, you're coming to the mountains, expect some changes over your first couple weeks here. You will get assimilated to it pretty fast. At least most people do. But if you're going from sea level, for instance, and even if you're in decent shape, you suddenly go up to 8, 9, 10,000 plus feet in elevation, and you go on a hike that has any type of steep incline to it, odds are you are going to have a moment of shortness of breath. It's an adjustment period. You can see it in professional athletes when they come here to play sports. That's why they're on the sidelines sucking oxygen. It takes a while. Your body will adjust. The other thing I would mention, because again, I think it just catches people, especially the first time they go through it, is how quickly our weather can change. If you have spent only maybe a handful of days here or a week here and there, which is the case for most people, they've visited to come ski or maybe they've come out for the summer, you're not used to these shifts. Or maybe the only shift you saw was going from, sun to a little bit of rain or sun to a little bit of snow. Denver, especially as we get into those winter months, can have some pretty extreme days. You might have a day where it's sunny in the morning and then all of a sudden we get 8 or 9, 10 inches of snow during the day, and then it's pretty calm that evening. So just be aware that you might see these quick changes, and especially if you're driving, maybe you're heading up the hill to go skiing, don't expect that the weather you start with is the weather you're going to end with. And I say this with all seriousness because it's impacted me and my family. The sun here hits, and it hits hard, not just because of heat, but because of how high in elevation we are. Make sure you're throwing on some sunscreen. It will burn you quickly, and I'm not exaggerating about that. Next up, and listen, this is a big one, whether you are going to buy a house or whether you're going to rent a house or whether you're going to rent and then buy, and that is overpaying for a specific neighborhood or a specific area based on the vibe, based on the energy, when you could save yourself a few bucks by being in an adjacent neighborhood or an adjacent area that still gives you access to those points. So here's a perfect example for you. I am a huge fan of the Highlands here in Denver. It's one of the greatest neighborhoods just west of Denver. It's filled with walkability, restaurants, shops, cafes, all of the things. There will be a lot of people who look to live in the Highlands, again, whether they're buying a house or renting a house. And if budget isn't a concern, have at it. I mean, I would absolutely consider living there. But if budget is a concern, look to areas like Sloan's Lake, Edgewater, and Wheat Ridge, which are communities just west and maybe a little southwest of the Highlands, where you can live in these great areas, save yourself a few bucks, and then you have roughly a 10-minute drive to get into the heart of the Highlands. So a lot of people in these communities will live there for that purpose. They'll live there because they're close to these other amenities while not having to pay the big price for it. And there are a ton of these examples. So find those locations that you really like, but then have a real conversation, perhaps with me, about areas circling it that might be a little more cost effective while giving you that quick access that you want, whether you're driving over in 5 to 10 minutes or taking a quick walk. Third biggest mistake people make, especially if they're coming from some of the larger cities, is misunderstanding how traffic will work in Denver. Now listen, I agree that if you're in New York, Chicago, LA, maybe Miami, our traffic is a joke. I lived in New York for many years. I think it's a joke at times, but a lot of times people will come from these larger cities or where traffic gets really backed up, and they just assume that because Denver is a smaller town, traffic is gonna move quickly. They misunderstand it. This also impacts people who are moving from smaller towns or smaller cities and really haven't dealt with a lot of traffic. So understand that when you Google a drive time from one place in the Denver area to another, and it doesn't show any traffic, that drive may be increased by, let's say, 50%. So a 15-minute drive becomes a 20 to 25-minute drive once you throw traffic in. Be prepared for that. And be prepared for the fact that on a pretty consistent basis, both I-25, our north-south highway, and I-70, our east-to-west highway, tend to have a solid amount of traffic. And that is basically from 7 o'clock in the morning all the way till roughly 7, 8 o'clock at night. There is some level of traffic on those highways. For my mountain folks, the people that want to go skiing, be prepared, as we're going to talk about here in a little bit, that I-70 is not always a smooth ride up and down the hill either. And one thing, as much as I love my city, we don't have the best timed lights. That's one of the things, especially if you're coming from a city like New York where you're used to just like that green row where they all turn green. It doesn't happen in Denver. Denver likes to make you brake check right till you get to the light and then it turns green. It's a tad annoying. Be prepared. Next up is one that some of the folks that I have talked to about moving here shared with me and really wanted me to emphasize. And that is, be prepared for the friend curve to take a while. Be prepared to have it take a while to start building connections and building rapport with people. I've heard both like the greatest experiences and the worst experiences here. People who have come to Denver and pretty quickly found some friend groups, got involved in different communities, and the people who have the most success, from my experience, tend to be the ones who get involved in certain community elements. I have some friends that moved here who got into outdooring big time, started going to these classes, going on hikes with groups, and they built a friend group very quickly. For some of the other people who didn't necessarily have activities, didn't necessarily have time, and maybe moved to a certain area where they just didn't have as many community events or opportunities to meet people, they had a tough time. And some of them continue to have a tough time. So while I would like to believe that Denver is a welcoming town and certainly a melting pot, that has not been the experience for everyone. Be prepared to have that experience of building these friend groups take a while, and really be prepared, if possible, to break out of your shell. If you're not really an extrovert, not really into community or doing certain events or activities, think about it. It might help. So number 5, and I started to allude to this earlier, and that is, do not imagine that mountain access is always going to be the easiest thing. They say that sometimes mountain traffic is biblical, like it comes to a standstill where people are just in a parking lot of I-70. Now, some of this can be predicted. If you're heading up on a Friday afternoon, if you're coming back on a Sunday afternoon, that's typically when you see the most traffic. Westbound on I-70, getting out of the city at the beginning of a weekend, eastbound coming back from the mountains. the worst. But there are times where these mountain passes, they just get backed up. I-70 is not your only access into the mountains, so there's certainly other options. And depending on what part of the city that you live in. I've talked a lot about the fact that if you're on the west side of I-25, those suburbs usually have pretty quick access to at least get to I-70 and into the mountains. Whereas if you're coming from east of I-25, if you're coming from areas like Aurora, Parker to some extent, Commerce City, Brighton, that drive might be a bit longer and you might have some of that city traffic before you hit I-70. All in all, I would say that if you plan on being a big mountain person, hopefully you have a schedule that allows you to avoid that Friday, Sunday traffic for the most part, or at least hopefully you can get up there sometimes when that is not always going to cause you pain and suffering. Next up, and this was huge to my parents and to future parents, and that is not doing their due diligence as far as researching not just school districts, but schools themselves. So if you get onto websites like Better Schools, niche.com, there's a few others, they're going to give you some general outlines, and a lot of them will have reviews of specific schools. So I'll talk to people and they'll say, okay, we did our due diligence and we looked, and Boulder Valley School District has really high ratings. We want to move there. But they don't necessarily do any research or due diligence on the specific school they want their kiddos to go to, whether that's current or in the future. And listen, even if you don't have kiddos, even if you don't plan on having kiddos, but you do plan on buying a house, I'm gonna tell you right now, schools matter to your property value. So make sure, whether you, again, have kiddos and you're planning their future, or you plan on buying a house, really look at what schools are in range of your home, but also Colorado has school select. So what options do you have? The biggest difference being, again, those folks that just kind of looked at the general district and said, yep, that looks good, we're gonna move there, as opposed to the people who said, okay, I like this school district and I like this group of schools, we wanna be close to them. Next up, and I actually just made a video about this last week, and that is moving to Denver, and moving to Colorado for that matter, without really getting an idea of the difference in political views, cultural views that exist. So Colorado, as I mentioned before, used to be a pretty red state, started to mix purple. Now, especially in the Denver metro area, it tends to be very blue leaning. So when you think about that as far as the city, keep in mind though that many of these suburbs and many of these counties are more mixed. It's not so stringently blue. Now, whether that is important to you or not, whether that excites you about Denver and the suburbs or not, some things to keep in mind is that, you know, around here you've got heavy regulation on development, but you also have deep resistance to density. So, you know, this compound effect where we don't want homes on top of homes on top of homes, but you also have heavy regulation that impacts homes being built in the first place. You know, there's a lot of progressive climate action, but there's also libertarian land use pushback. So the biggest thing is I would not assume political alignment. Come with curiosity. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself frustrated. You're going to find yourself misunderstood in conversations. I would not come here just thinking Denver is a certain way. I think most of us have similar concerns. We want the same things. So I would simply say as you come to Denver, don't assume you have it figured out. Get a lay of the land before you formulate that opinion. Now, playing off of believing that everybody is an outdoor junkie and that not being your style, the other issue is people who move to Colorado working remotely, which is an awesome opportunity, but then never leaving their house. And this is a more common mistake than you would imagine. I cannot tell you how many times I've followed up with people or talked to them after they've gotten here, starting to get a feel for being in Colorado. And then one of the negatives they say is we really haven't, gone and enjoyed everything. We've just been here, or I've just been here. You're not meeting anybody. You're not experiencing anything of Colorado. You just moved 4 walls to another 4 walls. So I would encourage you as you're coming out, especially if you're gonna work remote, I don't know, maybe work from a coffee shop, work from somewhere else if you can, but make it a priority to get outside. Make it a priority to go and experience different things. Even if it's going outside to go back inside somewhere else, don't stay in your house. That is one of the biggest negatives that people have shared with coming to Colorado working remotely. Without question, one of the biggest elements to moving to a new area is building that community. And the fact is that it takes time, it takes effort, and being at home or not getting out and about in any way, shape, or form affects that. It's going to have a negative impact on you. It has time and time again in the experiences that have been shared with me. So I encourage you as much as you can, break out of that shell a little bit, get out of the house. Don't just stick around those four walls. A few more for you. Number 10 is ignoring our transit line limitations. So, certainly we have the RTD for the bus, we have Uber and cabs everywhere, but primarily the limitations on our light rail. So the Denver light rail it's great if you are in an area where you can use it. The light rail runs through Old Town Arvada. It runs through downtown Littleton. It runs up to Golden through parts of Lakewood. It runs out to Aurora. It runs down to Parker. However, the lines are pretty limited. If you're not close to them, odds are you don't use them. So, for example, someone living in Castle Rock has to come up north on I-25 before they can get to a light rail station that would then take them into Denver. So I've talked to a lot of people who start, or at least think they're gonna start their experience here in Denver by using the light rail system, and then they learn rather quickly that they can't. I actually said Parker, that's a line that hasn't extended as far as they want. So that being, again, a community that doesn't have as easy of access to the light rail. So don't underestimate that. Do not underestimate the need for a car, especially if you are going to be living in the suburbs. The farther away you are from the heart of Denver, especially if you have to get to Denver for certain things, you may need that vehicle. Do not underestimate our limitations in public transportation. Number 11, and I say this to an extent, and that is forgetting kind of the specifics of what industries Denver specializes in. Now, this has gotten a lot more elaborate than I might have said 5 to 10 years ago. So there was a time where Denver was an oil and gas town if you were coming here for high-paying jobs. And there are a lot of high-paying jobs in Denver. Just understand a lot of them are competitive and a lot of them are industry specific. So you are talking finance, healthcare, a ton of tech, education. I mentioned healthcare already. We'll say it twice because it's important. So it's not just across the board. Some of these industries that are going to pay the highest are specific. You should certainly be aware of that as you prepare that move. And that's been a situation. I've talked to plenty of people who want to come out here. They're going to work in retail. They're going to work in lifestyle. They're going to work in art, or in the arts, I should say. And those jobs haven't necessarily been as high paying, haven't been able to provide them the lifestyle that they wanted, or the specific job they want has been extremely challenging to land. So just be aware, depending on what type of job you have, what might work best for you. I would also say, if at all possible, make sure you have that job in place before you get here. Whether you are getting here and then starting, or you're starting remotely and making the move here, that's a huge element. I've talked to plenty of people, again, I say that, who have made the move to Denver, then tried to figure out the job situation. Again, if that doesn't go as well as they hoped, they're off to a really bad start and it's hard to recover. And last, and listen, I can't emphasize this one enough, and that is first, treating Denver like a 24/7 vacation, and two, romanticizing this move instead of really planning it. So I talk to so many people who come out here and they're doing brewery tours and they're doing day trips to Breck and they're going to Red Rock shows, and it adds up fast. It feels like they're like getting to know the city, but they're really not. They're just burning through their budget. They're just going to do the fun things. And I mean, listen, Denver is a lifestyle, but it includes bills. It includes responsibilities. Yes, it includes a little bit of rest. Burnout from trying to do it all is real. And I have experienced that with some of the people I've talked to, where they came out, and those first 6 months were amazing and they had a great time, and then the reality of moving here set in. You have the mountains, you have the sunshine, yes, you have the brewery. It's easy to get caught up in the romance of making a move, but moving to Denver or anywhere, that's serious change, that's serious work. If you don't think through the logistics, if you don't think through your budget, the community, a career that's long-term, the city can go from a dream to disappointment real quick. And I've seen it happen time and time again for the people who just fell in love with the city and made a move. I may myself have that experience. When I left the Navy, moved to the Bronx, New York. You want to talk about a place that's a lot of fun on a long weekend. but a tough city to live in. That was my experience with New York. I didn't plan properly, and that's why I emphasize it to you here. The people who thrive when they move here do so because they prepared with intention to make the move to Denver. And listen, that's what this entire conversation is about. That's what I'm here for, and that's why I would love. You have any questions, concerns, you want to talk through your plans, that's a perfect opportunity to hit me up. The number and email you see on your screen, know that I am always the person answering those phone calls, answering those texts, answering those emails, there when and if you need me. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everett. That was the 12 biggest mistakes people make when moving to Denver, Colorado in 2025. Until I see you next time, peace.